Newsroom 4.5 and Remote 4.5 both include a multi-track editor. In Newsroom 4.5, it's called NLE, so the tool NLE is your multi-track editor. When it opens up, it prompts you for a name of a project. So here we're going to say New Project. And we can just put Testing Multitrack. The multi-track editor opens up with 3 tracks and add a track from the main menu, depending on how many tracks your project's going to have. Each track has a volume control, so you can control the overall volume of the whole track in one move. There's grouping, so you can have tracks in different groups, and you can mute tracks while you're playing back. Your transport controls are on the top. The multi-track editor, or the non-linear editor in Newsroom 4.5, does not have a record button. So all the audio must be brought in from Newsroom or from outside of the Newsroom environment. Windows WAV file or an MP3 anywhere on your network can be dragged and dropped in here. If you're taking a clip from Newsroom, and I'll just use my audio list to do so, the first track might be your bed track of, say, music. And you can just drag it, drop it to the timeline where you want it to start, give it a name or take the default, and the track goes in. I'm just going to move it to the beginning and lower the overall volume. And that's track 1. At any time I can choose to play it. And this play button plays all the tracks that are not muted. All right. My second cut is going to start not at the beginning, and it's going to be audio. In this case, I'm going to use the My Sites to drag and drop audio. And I'm going to take this and drag it, drop it, give it a name. And that's where that one starts. Now that's my voice. So I want it to be a little bit louder than the bed track of music. The third track that I'm going to add is going to be a WAV file or an MP3 outside of the Newsroom environment. So this is a 2-step process. We're going to go File, Import Audio. So it brings me up to a browse. And just browse to the server or folder where your MP3s or WAVs are. And in this case, I'm taking a WAV file. Now that loads it into the library. The second step now is on the third track. You can right-click, Insert Library Clip. There it is. You have a chance to play it or just insert it. And in this case, I'm going to move it further down. So now I've got 3 tracks, and we might want to play it to see what we've got.
He plays against all the other teams' top lines. He'll be, if it's the last minute of the game, he's the guy that's on the ice. If it's in the last 2 minutes, he's the guy we want on the ice in regards to playing against other top lines. I think his defensive part of this game is the game that farthest, it's been 7 feet.
You also can manipulate the audio and fade in or out segments. So if I wanted to fade in this track, I have to be at the beginning of it and fade in. We can also, on any track, highlight the track, right-click, add a volume point. Anywhere else, highlight, right-click, add a volume point. Highlight, right-click, add a volume point. Now you can pull the volume points with that in that range to lower or accentuate the audio on that particular spot. You can pull the time bar, press Control to scrub. So you press on the time bar, press Control on the keyboard, and that's scrubbing as opposed to just moving it with the mouse. Putting your mouse in the black area allows you to reset your starting point of the track. So you've got to be below this line or pull the time bar. And a final adjustment of volume levels. Now at any time you can close this editor and these files will remain in their raw form on this local computer and be saved here. So you've got to log back in as the same user on the same workstation to come back and re-edit the project. So in this case I'm not going to finish, I'm going to close. It's going to say the project has changed. Save the changes. So here we save the changes, and as long as I log back into the same computer under the same name, I can open my nonlinear editor. I'm presented with what projects are here, highlight, and open, and it comes back exactly as you left it. The last step, if you're happy with your tracks, is to render the project into one track. So rendering will take all 3 tracks and allow you to save it to the Newsroom playlist or as an MP3 anywhere outside of the Newsroom environment on your local computer or network, or as a standard Windows WAV file, which will contain all these tracks. So let's do the rendering under the main menu, File. Render project is the command. And as long as we don't have any of them muted, and as long as they're in the same group, they're all coming through. Here it wants for me to pick how I'm going to save it. I can save it to the network, and this track will become a Newsroom clip. I can save it to my local audio list and hide it off the system until I'm ready to drag and drop it to the network playlist. I can save to a group, and that allows me to save it to one or more playlists. And now we are also able to save to a file folder, alias, or FTP site. And finally, your last choice on rendering, on where or how to do it, is to export it as a Windows WAV file or an MP3. So in this case, I'm going to put it on my desktop, and I'm going to make a WAV file first. So I'm applying no compression, and a save will give me a WAV file there. I'm going to uncheck the close after save, so this dialog will stay open and allow me to save it as an MP3. So I should have a WAV file on my desktop, and now I'm going to make an MP3 out of it and save that to my desktop. And it's been saved. And one final save to my network, to my playlist or automation. And this one's going to my on-air list. And that's been saved as well. Let's go take a look where those have gone. So I've saved one to on air, and there's my testing multi-track.
He plays against all the other teams' top lines. He'll be...
And let's check our desktop for a WAV file and an MP3. There's my multitrack.wav, and here's my MP3.
He plays against all the other teams.
And finally,
he plays against all the other teams' top lines. He'll be...
finish your project, just close, and it saves all your changes. You can come back at any time, open up the project, and add to it, take something away, and render it again. That should get you started using the multi-track editor.